When it comes to video games based on movies, the track record can be, let's say, spotty. But every so often a game comes along that not only does justice to its cinematic inspiration but also becomes a standout in its own right. Enter Batman Returns, a game that not only channels the brooding, gothic vibe of Tim Burton's 1992 classic but delivers an action-packed experience that still holds up decades later. While many remember the Super Nintendo era for colorful platformers and charming mascots, Batman Returns stands out for its darker, more visceral edge. It's a game that doesn't shy away from being tough, demanding, and stylishly brutal, qualities that mirror the very essence of Batman. The story of Batman Returns on the Super Nintendo closely mirrors the plot of the film, embracing its dark, gothic atmosphere and tragic characters. You step into the role of Bruce Wayne's alter ego, Batman, as he faces off against two of Gotham's most iconic villains, Catwoman and the Penguin. Both are complex figures, blurring the line between victim and antagonist, and the game does an admirable job weaving these dynamics into its gameplay. The plot kicks off as Gotham City becomes a battleground during the holiday season, with the nefarious Red Triangle circus gang wreaking havoc under the Penguin's command. The Penguin, abandoned as a baby and raised in the sewers, has resurfaced to exact revenge on Gotham and manipulate his way into power. Alongside him is Selina Kyle, also known as Catwoman, whose vendetta against corrupt businessman Max Schreck and her morally ambiguous relationship with Batman adds layers of intrigue. The game's cutscenes, while brief, do a commendable job of setting the stage with moody visuals and dialogue that evoke the film's core themes of identity, revenge, and redemption. One of the standout features is how well the game integrates its story beats into the gameplay. However, the narrative does take some liberties to enhance its transition to the video game format. The story naturally expands the action sequences to fit the beat-em-up gameplay style, throwing hordes of enemies at Batman to create a more engaging and action-packed experience. While this makes for a more exciting game, it sometimes feels like Batman is constantly battling an endless parade of clowns. The game's faithfulness to the source material isn't perfect. Some players might feel that the storytelling leans too heavily on action, sidelining the quieter, more emotional moments that made the movie so memorable. The complicated relationship between Batman and Catwoman, for example, is only lightly touched upon, leaving a lot of the film's nuanced drama behind. But given the limitations of the medium and the genre, it's an understandable sacrifice. The gameplay of Batman Returns is where the game truly shines, delivering an experience as hard-hitting as the Caped Crusader himself. At its core, the game is a side-scrolling beat-em-up, but Konami took the genre to another level by injecting it with a gritty, cinematic flair that perfectly captures the essence of Tim Burton's vision of Gotham City. From the moment you take control of Batman, it's clear this isn't just a simple brawler. This is a relentless gauntlet of street-level combat, environmental destruction, and satisfying superhero power fantasy. The gameplay primarily revolves around hand-to-hand combat as you guide Batman through 7 stages, filled with enemies from the Red Triangle circus gang. These clownish thugs come in all shapes and sizes, from knife throwers and stilt walkers to acrobatic fire breathers, each with distinct attack patterns that keep you on your toes. Thankfully, Batman's moveset is robust and feels weighty in all the right ways. His punches and kicks pack a visceral punch, and his grapple move, where you grab an enemy and hurl them into another or smash them against the wall, is endlessly satisfying. It's moments like these that emphasize Batman's physicality and make you feel like the Dark Knight. One of the game's standout features is the use of the environment in combat. Gotham's snowy streets, dark alleyways, and abandoned stores aren't just set dressing, they're weapons. You can slam enemies into walls, throw them through windows, or bash them into decorative objects, adding an extra layer of immersion and brutality to the fights. Batman Returns also shakes things up with a mix of gameplay styles. While most levels are traditional beat-em-up fare, the game incorporates side-scrolling platforming elements and even a Batmobile chase sequence that feels ripped straight from an arcade game. Batman's arsenal of gadgets, a staple of his character, is somewhat underutilized here. You have access to his batarang and a grappling hook, but their use is limited compared to what fans might expect. The focus is squarely on Batman's fists, and while that's not inherently a bad thing, it feels like a missed opportunity to explore more strategic or creative combat options. The gameplay of Batman Returns is as impactful and gritty as the film that inspired it. While it may not reinvent the beat-em-up genre, its environmental interactivity, cinematic flair, and brutal combat make it a standout entry on the Super Nintendo. It's a game that demands your attention, and maybe a few extra continues, but it rewards you with one of the most satisfying superhero brawler experiences of the era. The graphics and sound are nothing short of a masterclass in creating atmosphere. Konami's expertise shines through in every visual and audio detail, making the game feel like an extension of Tim Burton's dark, gothic Gotham. From the opening cutscene to the final confrontation, the game immerses players in its icy, brooding world, leveraging the full capabilities of the Super Nintendo to deliver a cinematic experience. Batman Returns is stunning for its time. The game captures the essence of Burton's Gotham with dark, moody environments punctuated by festive but unsettling holiday decor. Snow falls gently in the background as you traverse dimly lit alleyways, neon-lit streets, and abandoned storefronts, creating a striking contrast between Gotham's grit and the cheer of Christmas. The pixel art is highly detailed, with rich textures and carefully designed backgrounds that feel alive with tension and foreboding. One standout aspect of the graphics is the use of cinematic cutscenes between levels. These scenes use a combination of still images and text to convey the story, complete with dramatic lighting and a film-like grain that pays homage to the movie. If the graphics bring Gotham to life visually, the sound design ensures you hear its heartbeat. The soundtrack, composed by Jun Funahashi and his team, is a brilliant adaptation of Danny Elfman's iconic score from the film. While the Super Nintendo sound chip couldn't replicate the lush orchestral arrangements of the original, the composers translated Elfman's music into hauntingly atmospheric chiptunes that capture the same sense of mystery and urgency. The main theme, which plays during the title screen, immediately sets the mood, and the stage themes follow suit with tracks that balance tension, heroism, and a touch of melancholy. The sound effects deserve equal praise. Punches land with a satisfying thud, and the clinking of shattered glass when you smash an enemy through a window is a small but rewarding detail. Explosions, weapon swings, and enemy cries all have a crisp, impactful quality that adds to the visceral nature of the combat. However, the sound design isn't without its flaws. Some of the enemy grunts and repetitive sound effects can start to grate after extended play sessions. While this was a common issue in the 16-bit era, it's more noticeable here due to the game's reliance on large waves of enemies. The game looks and sounds like a love letter to the film, and it's hard not to admire how effectively it uses its visuals and audio to immerse players in the role of Gotham's brooding protector. For fans of both Batman and retro gaming, it's a feast for the senses that still holds up as a standout example of audiovisual storytelling from the 16-bit era. When discussing the legacy of Batman Returns, it's impossible to ignore its position as one of the best movie-to-game adaptations of the 16-bit era. In a time when licensed games were often rushed cash-ins, Konami delivered a polished, cinematic experience that not only respected its source material but stood on its own as a solid beat-em-up. Decades later, Batman Returns continues to be a staple in conversations about the golden age of retro gaming, a testament to its lasting appeal. From a gameplay perspective, Batman Returns helped solidify the Super Nintendo as a powerhouse for the beat-em-up genre. It wasn't the first or the flashiest example, but its gritty combat, environmental interaction, and stage variety demonstrated the genre's potential for depth and creativity. In the years since its release, Batman Returns has been fondly remembered by fans and retro gaming enthusiasts. It's a common inclusion in lists of best Batman games or greatest Super Nintendo beat-em-ups, cementing its place as a classic. In the broader scope of Batman games, Batman Returns serves as a pivotal moment in the evolution of the Dark Knight's interactive adventures. While earlier games, like Batman, the video game on the NES, laid the groundwork for superhero games, Batman Returns refined the formula, delivering a more polished and immersive experience. Its success likely influenced the development of future Batman titles, including the critically acclaimed Batman Arkham series, which similarly emphasized atmosphere, faithful storytelling, and brutal combat. Ultimately, Batman Returns for the SNES stands as a shining example of how to do a licensed game right. It respects its source material, pushes the hardware of its time, and delivers gameplay that feels tailored to the character and his world. For fans of Batman, beat-em-ups, or retro gaming in general, it remains a must-play title that embodies the best of the 16-bit era. Its legacy is that of a game that didn't just adapt a movie, it brought it to life.